till about 5 minutes to 10.
Chairman Murphy and members of the committee, my name is Barbara Glidewell, Glidewell. I live in Oregon. I have served for 35 years as ombudsman and patient advocate for a major medical center in Portland, Oregon. I need to tell you my statement does not reflect the views or opinions of my employer, and I'm not speaking on behalf of my employer. I'm speaking to you today as a private citizen. From the inception of the law in 1997 in Oregon to 2009, when I retired from that position, it was my responsibility to administer Oregon's Death with Dignity Act for patients requesting access to the law. That means I was involved for 12.5 years in interviews and discussions between patient and provider and families to oversee and ensure the requirements of the law were met, the structured law, in each and every voluntary request by an adult terminally ill Oregonian. In Oregon, regardless of the age of the patient, aid in dying is not offered as an alternative end-of-life option to terminally ill patients unless the patient brings the discussion, brings up the issue to the provider in the interview as aid in dying option. All the other end-of-life options when a person is facing a terminal illness and is entering palliative care and hospice care are offered to the patient. And we all know what those are, so I'm not going to belabor them, but of course one could stop eating and drinking. That's an unpleasant opportunity, but it can be done. And patients are told all the other feasible options. Some patients prefer to be terminally sedated so that they're not aware of the end of their life as their life force ebbs. A patient interested to access Oregon's Death with Dignity law, again, must make the request after a thoughtful dialogue between the patient and provider, often including family members or significant others. This is well documented in the medical record, and it's required to be established what the documentation, what the discussion was. It is not true that elderly patients are targeted, encouraged, or coerced into considering or requesting aid in dying. Again, it is a voluntary request by an adult patient diagnosed as terminally ill who is beginning that phase of their life under no duress or coercion, is alert and cogent, who may request to hasten their death. We have seen that often it's a matter of consideration of dignity in the last days of life that causes the patient to ask for aid in dying. Now, when I say dignity, I'm going to be a bit graphic here. You know, we can have plenty of medication. We can become constipated from that medication, the opiates. But many people have said to me in these discussions, you know, I don't have adequate people at home, and hospice isn't there 24/7, and I don't want my granddaughter diapering me. When the end comes, I'm ready, and I would like to choose to hasten my death when I've had enough. So the requesting patient is terminal, sadly will die relatively soon, may be experiencing intractable pain despite the medications, a loss of dignity and autonomy, and wishes to have control over their own dying process. Indeed, elderly patients, as well as those younger who suffer the burden and misery of an advancing terminal illness, do voluntarily request and often qualify for the Death with Dignity Act. Some use the medication and some do not. I'll tell you that statistic in a moment. However, nearly every patient mentions they want the medication to provide peace of mind, so to speak, as their backup plan in case the last days become intolerable. So this is a matter of compassion and choice, patient autonomy and dignity. Please be aware that very few Oregonians actually use the law. In fact, in 2009 and again in 2010, less than 0.5% of Oregon deaths are physician aid in dying. So we have new statistics for you. In the year 2010, 96 prescriptions for a lethal dose of medication were written under the provisions of the Act, compared to 95 in 2009. Of the 96 patients for whom prescriptions were written during 2010, 59 died from adjusting the medications. That is 3 more than 2009. 6 patients still had a prescription from a previous time and actually were doing well enough that they chose not to use the medication until that time would come. We have a 6-month requirement in Oregon to imply that you likely might pass in 6 months, but you certainly do not have to. and every patient is informed they never have to use the medication, even if they haven't. So in summary, a small number of individuals, as indicated in the Oregon statistics which I provided to the Secretary, in 13 years of experience, Oregonians do exercise their right to choose a day upon which they find themselves exhausted from the burden of suffering. And suffering is suffering from many different perspectives. It can be physical, it can be emotional, it can be spiritual, it can be existential. And they hasten their death by taking lethal but legal dose of medication. So the Oregon experience shows the law has worked as intended. Elder abuse has not happened in Oregon as a result of this law. Please preserve this right for Montanans, and I hope you will consider your vote for Senate Bill 167. Thank you.